Greetings and welcome to episode number 18 of the Geek Speak. I have back with me Alex, and today we're going to have some super interesting fun. I missed last week. Sorry, not sorry. I was sick, and technically the week before that we had internet outages where Alex graciously finished the entire broadcast with Riddler Man. Shout out to those two for being awesome and helping me. Actually, Josh started filming the last whole 20 minutes of that episode. If anybody hasn't watched that, so it was a real shit show in the last 2 weeks. I'm just gonna say now it's not as bad as what's happened down in the southern states. I'm not gonna discount what's happened down there, but just from my standpoint, from what I'm used to dealing with, it's been a cluster for the last week. So.
Just one thing after the other. So
yep. So how have things been with you?
things have been good. Just continuing to go over some commoner things. Our Clash Bash is currently happening, and that seems to be a lot of fun. Commoner has been kind of something I've been looking a little bit more deeper into as far as content wise, because if you're unaware, and your viewership's unaware, there is a commoner battle hardened happening in Portland, which is really, really cool. So
I think I heard you talking about that with oh my gosh,
Dice Commando.
Yes, there was an episode recently with that. I think I remember reading up or hearing that.
Yeah, that was a good episode. If you haven't gone check that out, I certainly suggest it. We talk a lot about how we feel about the commoner meta. I think it's great because, I mean, just overall, obviously it's probably not the initial topic of today's video, but seeing where commoner is moving is really nice, because while Ira still does a lot of really great things, it's very cool to see so many different heroes still have a fighting chance in a meta, and it not be so much it's because this card is busted, or because these cards are, the most craziest things. It's just these people have been playing these heroes for forever. They know how to tech into a meta, and they understand that with a limited card pool that is commoner, you're kind of expecting to see only one kind of deck when it comes to a hero. And unless somebody comes in with something completely different that nobody was expecting, attack action Kano or something, then you're in for a pretty solid understanding of what your opponent's hero is going to do.
Well, that may be a fun segue into what I was... I literally had no agenda for today's call for whatever reason. I looked through... It's light on news. Everyone's anticipating Worlds in about 20 days. So, a lot of people are hush-hush. The product cycle, we've been through the product release for Rosetta. Dash's deck is coming out very in short time here. But, truly, I kind of wanted to do something completely off the wall. And originally I was going to suggest that we played a game, but I feel like it'd be even more interesting to build a deck. And I wasn't going to say... I was originally thinking about building it in Commoner, but I feel like it would be better to try and just do this concept in not Commoner, because there's a lot of these cards in this particular hero that we will be talking about that I think make this even more hilarious, because this is totally probably what people would call a jank deck build that we're about to go deep dive into. And I actually think that this is the beginning. This is like the iceberg. This is the tip. I feel like I started to discover some of this in Baltimore, and I feel like more of it has come out since then. But nobody wants to talk about this style of deck, so I want to theorize more of this. And this gets into a very interesting overarching conversation, which, as an example, Magic the Gathering, and a lot of people have talked about that. You even had a video recently, I think, on your, podcast where, you talked about, kind of the ramifications of some of the things that happened. But one of the things that is kind of part of that, and I don't remember if you talked specifically about this in your video, but when they banned those cards and the commander format got put back underneath the rule, or not from the rules committee, but got put back under, Wizards directly. And there's that tier list where there's they want to say tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. More people may actually look at buying cards because they might want to have the same deck build. So as an example, if we were to look at this from a Flesh and Blood perspective, I might want to have a dash build in a tier 1, a dash build in a tier 2, a dash build in a tier 3, and a dash build in tier 4.
Right.
Well, if it's 3 copies in each, I now need 12 copies of that card to be able to facilitate 4 CC decks, or if you go blitz, like 8 copies of a card, if it's available in all 4. But if it's a tier 4 card, you'd only need 2 copies of it, or 3 copies. Or if it's a tier 3 and 4 card, you'd want, the respective either 6 or 4, and then so on and so forth down the list.
Right.
What I think I'd like to try to do is, there's other concepts later I'd like to talk about with you, which is a mishmash of like a Fab Cube, but like Commander for Flesh and Blood with singletons, like one-ofs. I've been tossing around some idea concepts on that. I think that'd be kind of interesting, but I don't know if anybody's willing to try that as a format, because it seems kind of outlandish, I guess, because it's very random, right? Has anybody thought, or have you heard of anybody murmur anything about that style of a deck idea?
I do know that I don't know if it's on Red Zone Rogue's channel or if it's on DM Armada's channel, but they did a battle, a singleton battle of Flesh and Blood. I didn't watch it, so I'm not entirely sure on the outcome of that. I guess the one thing that I think, it's always great to take the game that you love and innovate upon it. And I think that a singleton format is kind of a fun way to look at it, because it allows you to put cards in there that normally you wouldn't, or even if it comes to the point where, like, the count your blessings, right? Count your blessings is nowhere near as terrifying if there's just a 1 of each color as opposed to 3 of each color, or 2 of each color. And so I think there's a fun little standpoint for it, but at the end of the day, it's however you want to have fun with Flesh and Blood. That's kind of the whole.
Yeah, I don't expect it to get much traction, but it's kind of like there's a lot of different formats out there, right? I mean, if you go to the game, on Fab TCG, and you actually look at the formats tab, you have the official ones, which is Blitz, Classic Constructed. We have Sealed and Booster. Then you have UPF, Commoner. There's Shapeshifter, which I don't really hear a lot of people talking too much about that. You got all the different team, and then Blitz Constructed, Living Legends, one of the bigger ones. Cube, and then I still don't, it's weird that they took it off there again. I remember at one point Clash being on here. I remember.
I don't think Clash has ever been on there, but I might be wrong.
What I see, and I could just be that I just knew what it was, and I always assumed it was on there. But I thought under community formats at one point it had something out there about it. But I know Fabre has it listed as a format, so it's neither here nor there. But there's also just a bunch of other stuff, like anybody who's tried to do like the PvE engines or whatever. There's those variations of those that are out there. So there's quite a bit of different options. So.
Yeah, there's tons of different formats you can definitely iterate yourself into, and I think really it comes down to, like, as long as you're trying to keep like the general overall spirit of the game good, then that's a great thing for the format, right? Like, a lot of, if you're going to be making a PvE format, it still should have that same give and take like you would in a game of Flesh and Blood. It's just you're working together as a team to defeat an opponent, as opposed to, it's just being a one-on-one situation. But even when you look at something like a singleton format, while I think a singleton format could be interesting, and will certainly be helpful in regards to if players, let's say, only want to buy 1 copy of a card because they don't want to buy 3 copies of a super expensive Majestic or anything of the sort. I think singleton often comes up only because Commander's in it like a very, very prominent format in Magic, and most people will go, well, how can I translate that into Flesh and Blood to where it kind of works the same way but is still Flesh and Blood? And so, well, I feel like, you're able to still have that happen. I would imagine there'd be a little bit more that would need to be done to the format than to just be like, just put it as singleton and then play Classic Constructed with that. I feel like there's there should be something else to kind of maybe put a stake onto how detrimental the format is. But that's I don't want to get too like deep in the think tank right now in regards to like how I would construct a format. I've already constructed, I think, like 2 formats this year alone in my brain, let alone getting a third one there in there would be far too much brain juice.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that also wants to do like several other interesting format ideas, because there's got to be some hidden, super hilarious thing we can do. But I think time will tell on that. Anyways, I feel like we can get into the meat and potatoes of like just kind of futzing around with this, because I feel like it'd be kind of exciting. So
Sure.
I would say strap in, because boy howdy, this is going to be an interesting one. Let's just say that, because
Oh, okay.
my brain and where I wanted to take this deck and the idea is probably not where anybody would think about doing this. So
Uh-huh.
first, I guess before I share my screen here, I want to get your reaction to the thought process of it's a Mechanologist deck.
No
And
surprise.
originally, my only goal was the Nitro Mechanoid. That was the intention, is to get Nitro Mechanoid out,
Right.
because that is just such a fun card.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to build a deck that's going to supplement that in any way, shape, or form. Now, with the heroes that exist, by the way, decks on February save automatically. Like, if I leave out of this deck, it saves everything I put in it, right?
Yeah, it should.
Okay. Because I didn't want to, like, lose my deck. Because I feel like if I click somewhere else, I'd lose it. But I don't know why I'm not finding
It should be under your decks if you're logged in. You
Cool.
should be able
Yep,
to just
it's right there.
pop it up
All
and see
right.
it.
So I'm gonna basically go away. Oh, there we go. Now
Oh, he's 2
I'm
now.
doubling. There we go. I'll live up in the corner. I'll do that. All right. Now, let's see here. I don't remember. Is this going to be... This is probably... Do you see backwards on your screen, or do you see forward on yours?
Nope. I mean, I see forward on mine. So
Okay. Because I remember having to do some weird shenanigans to make it work. So I don't know if you actually see the front. So this is a bunch of different Ultimate Pit Fight decks that I made back... I mean, it looks like it's...
Spotify playlist. That's so funny. Holy shit. Your melody deck. That's funny.
Yeah, I think I found somebody that had this, and I was like, that's pretty... Like, I copied some of these to try to get some ideas. One of the real old decks that I made was this version. Where was it? This is... Gotta Go Fast. No.
God, what's it like to only have 2 pages of decks on your February?
It just shows you how often I do not use Fabry. I mean,
gosh, I can't even tell you how many pages I have on this page.
I am 100% more a fan of building in real life. It's so much more fun.
Oh, I have 8 pages. 8 pages on February of decks. And that's because every set that comes out, I need to make a commoner, clash, and like a budget deck for every hero, and then upgrade the decks that I already have for those means. And it's just like, I feel like I build so many decks, and at least like I want them to at least be like updated lists. But I definitely prefer to play them in person, but having them visibly in a database is always very helpful. So
I wonder why. I wonder if my old deck is just gone. I didn't expect to not find it in here. I made this one today, but well, I have the physical version sitting over there, which basically is a very non-standard UPF version of this deck. It's what I brought to Baltimore.
right.
But the very first question is, if I go to decks, make a new deck. Come on. Come on, create. There we go. See, this just shows how much of a dum-dum I am with this, because I literally am not in here this much. Like, it's just, it blows my mind. So we want Mechanologist. Now, we could build with Dash, which is originally what I'd like to do, because Dash is my favorite. But really, we know that's going away really soon, so we'd either need to pick Dash IO. Now, I know a lot of people say with the Nitro Mechanoid, you really should pick the, max, because it creates a hyperdriver with the steam counters, and then you boost it in. Hyperdrivers get crank. I feel like that's still valid, but I feel like people won't expect, like, the idea behind this, the essence of this, is what the actual fuck just happened to me. I want that to be the reaction when this happens, because you're set up in such a way that they think one thing, but then the reality is you just build this board state and it becomes this, like, steam engine, kind of like that meme of Thomas the Tank Engine that just, like, comes out of nowhere and just, like, goes and runs you over or whatever. Like, that's kind of my thought process. I actually had a version I was toying around with Teklovasen because of the Evos, but my only concern with that, well, and actually the reality would be is, with the Evo piece, right? You could actually technically do both a Teklovasen and a Nitro Mechanoid. You could actually flip between the two. You really could do both. But you do start with basically no equipment because they're bases, right? You would need to come in with the bases and still put some Evos in there. So there's a version of this I think that Teklovasen could have that might have some Mechanologist base in it. But I wanted to talk over those hero options, and because we can always circle back and change the hero. But I guess let me show you the crazy piece that I have so far, and I get your reaction from some of the stuff. So let's start with the hero. We have Dash IO as the hero at the moment, and the reason we did Dash is because I believe since Dash is in the name, we can use the cards right now, like the I guess the special add-on cards that will allow me to add to Dash. So if I type Dash in here.
Yeah, her specializations,
add,
right?
Like, because it doesn't say, Spark of Genius does not specifically say anything other than it has to be just a dash. So that's why I'm thinking that, let me add one of each of those and then we'll come back.
You'd be correct. Yeah, the dash specializations work for Dash and Dash IO.
All right, so if I go back to cards here, all right, so we have Dash IO is the main. I've put into the sideboard, I put into the board here, I put in one adaptive dissolver, because I feel like if a piece of equipment were to be destroyed, I will be there is a card, I believe, that allows me to go search for a piece of a Mechanologist equipment and put it into, I think it's a Fabricate, I believe is what it is. I need to go grab that.
Fabricate.
So that needs to be in here as well, just to be on the backup, because obviously that might be a strategy as somebody try to blow up or banish one of the pieces of equipment, and I wanted to be able to have a backup for that. So there's one of each of these adaptive platings and adaptive dissolvers, so you'd have Arcane Barrier if you needed to. The only arm piece that made sense to me was this one, because, it's a material that actually would give the whole, Nitro Mechanoid Plus, right? And when they see this, they might be like, well, that means you're going to run Nitro Mechanoid because it has that, so that might be some indication to them.
Yeah.
But there's really not that many mech arms, to be honest with you. There really isn't. When I started looking around, oh my gosh, come on, go up here. ARM. The only options for arms are, Cogsworth base, right? Remove a steam counter, next Mechanologist. Now, this doesn't destroy itself, which is I wanted to make sure I had ones that didn't destroy themselves. Right. So, in this scenario here, what's your thought? I mean, that's one of them. The other one here is
honestly, if your goal is to keep equipment around for Nitro Mechanoid, and the overall goal is to make Nitro Mechanoid, then you should be running Galvanic Bender. Like, that's just like the arm piece for if you are trying to Nitro Mechanoid.
This is the one that's,
yeah, but see, it's got to equip something with Proto in its name, just for the record.
But isn't Dissolver? It's a
it's a base equipment. The Proto equipment is the other stuff that does not.
You can't.
Correct. You would not be able to get those into your deck through Fabricate.
Well, and maybe I'd have to maybe we'll put that in maybe. I didn't know you could do a maybe pile. That was kind of interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
learned about that recently. All right, so back into here, we have the legs, which is from the new mech deck, which is the heavy industrial gear shift. Banish the top 2 cards of your deck, gain 1 action point for each Mechanologist gain this way. So I feel like that's going to be a quick way for me to be able to, you know, well, but it says destroy. So again,
Yeah.
not much. I think there's another leg that I could possibly use.
I mean, you'd probably just be playing Accelerator at that rate.
Yeah, but it's still a destroy.
Unless you want the Cogworks legs might be the good one there.
Remove a steam counter from this gain 1 action point. Yeah, let's try that. I'd rather.
That's actually
almost,
probably the better one out of them if you're
I
trying to not destroy a thing.
Yeah, because I think that it would be better not to destroy. We have the heavy surveillance head, which is when it defends, you may banish top card of your deck. If you do, gets +1. So just a couple extra, maybe defense. Thought this was kind of interesting because again, hyperdriver synergy here. When you banish the hyperdriver from boosting, put it under this. If it has 3 or more, return. But the only thing that worries me about using something like that is if I boost away the hyperdriver. Typically, if it's in banish zone, there's other ways to get it back. But I don't think underneath this counts as banish zone, does it?
No.
So that may not be useful. That's why I had the Visitronic Model I.
It's certainly not a terrible choice because it does mean that if you are running physical, because you're going to be running physical hyperdrivers in the deck because you are not playing Max.
Correct.
So if you're not playing Max, you're going to need hyperdrivers in the deck. And so if they happen to be boosted, then you can put that under this, and then if there are 3 or more, you get to draw a card. But of course, you would at that point probably be running like Rainbow of Hyperdriver, which just like doesn't seem like it might be effective, but it's just another way to get like possibly 1 card draw or 2.
Sure. So there's a bunch of steam counters on here. I was hoping to find ways to move steam counters off of Symbiosis Shot onto other things. That was another option I was looking at. Techno Foundry Heart, and then Visitronic. So looking at the deck here right now, there's a lot of one-ofs because these were like cards I had thought about. So I guess I can start talking about some of these options in here. We got Big Bertha, which is, it's banished from boosting, put a steam counter on a hyperdriver, so that seems useful. Does cost a lot, but the idea is I pretty much want it to be banished. Like, that would be my hope. BIOS update, when this attacks, you can boost its turn, gains +3. So, yeah, but really I'm looking at it for the next Mechanologist item with 2 or less that's banished, put it into play. So my hope is to line up cards to be able to banish something to put it into play.
Yeah, and I mean, you have access to Dash's ability to look at the top of your deck, so it'll certainly be effective if you're trying to get out items to do that.
Correct. This is one of my fun cards. It basically gets them from graveyard back in. So this is kind of a reset button for me, specifically for hyperdrivers. We got Crankshaft, gives the extreme counter. This is for items, again with the steam hyperdrivers being 1. This allows 0/1, put it in. Fast and Furious, that's one of the newer cards. When it's banished from a boosting steam counter, I guess you can, but it doesn't have crank. So that might be part of the problem with that.
Yeah, if you're trying to put them on hyperdrivers, the Fast and Furious would be much better in Max than in Dash.
Got it. Gas Up is fun. I'm going to put a hyperdriver from your banished zone into the arena. So, honestly, even if the next attack doesn't actually go off, this is a way to suck a hyperdriver from the arena and put it in.
Yep.
This was fun, just to give a general +4. I don't know if that actually would affect anything because it's not in the Mechanologist attack. So Nitro Mechanoid, when it attacks, it is a action banish a card from under Nitro Mechanoid attack. So I don't know if that counts as an attack action. So I don't know if
I believe it's your next Mechanologist attack, and so the mech is a Mechanologist and it is an attack. So that should work there with synergy.
Heist is pretty good, 0/1. obviously this is it may not be around forever kind of a card, but
Right.
this still seems useful, I think.
I'd say so.
Um, you control hyperdrives that cost one less to play, so this is just kind of a easy boost, simple kind of a card. You got
Right.
Medex, which this is another way to get another item into the arena. Now this is where things start to kind of get a little bit wonky. I'm sure you'll start laughing at some of my choices here. So I want to include generic cards in this because the goal is not really to boost away everything. The goal is to set up a crazy ass board state and then do some fun stuff. So I think the Meeps here is kind of interesting because if I ever get into a situation where somebody has another item, this would be something that I could leverage to possibly steal that item away. Because I know that there are options, like, right, if I go against, I think, a Dromite, they can steal an item. I think that's the only one that can do it. There's a dragon that does that. So that's like
Kyloria.
my only really concern there. Plasma Mainline, I think, is useful just because it has a lot of the Steam synergy with it. Pour the Mold also is, basically it just says put an item with 2 or less from your hand into the arena. So 4-0, boom, boom, stick it in, go again. I feel like I should run that. Now this is really the fun tech that I was hoping for. So the idea is you pitch these and you use them for other stuff, and at the end of the game when you basically have no risk, you're already in nitro mode, you basically set up to where you get a couple of extra action points, and you go 10 foot tall, nitro 10 foot tall or whatever. You basically use these as something ridiculous. That'd be a hope with that. Twin Drive's kind of fun. Nitro Mechanoid, obviously, seems like gotta have that if I want to go that route. And truthfully, it's just I basically just need 3 hyperdrivers. That's the only requirement to make this work. So if on turn 2 or 3 I can have 3 nitro or 3 hyperdrivers, I could technically transform if I can get that card within that first 2 or 3 turns. Would be my thought, because I'll already have all the other requirements. I just need the resources. Right. Spark of Genius is a dash mechanologist. Put a item with X or less from your deck into play. So in that case, I only really have to have 2, which is a pretty easy to pitch for. And at that point, I'll get 1 hyperdriver into play. Bada bing, bada boom, and then theoretically, if I've boosted, I can get that. Other fun tech cards, I think Crazy Brew would be hilariously good, especially if I can manage to get a 5 or a 6. So you'll notice the theme here is I want action points. So that's 2 action points. This 2 energy. This one seems interesting because it does cost X. So, banish X items from your graveyard. When this tax gets plus X with 3 or more hyperdrives are banished, this gains 3/6 and gets go again. So
you gain 6 resources and it gets go again.
So if I don't need the hyperdrivers, or the plan is the hyperdrivers have already been there and then there's more that are banished, this card becomes pretty stupid pretty quick.
Yeah, because you assume, right, this is let's just say the minimum for this to be turned on is 3 hyperdrivers, right? So if you get 3 hyperdrivers in your graveyard and then you pitch a blue and attack with Hyper Scrapper, banish the 3 hyperdrivers in your grave, then you get, this will be coming in for 5 damage, and then you also will gain 6 resources, and this gets go again. Yep. So you effectively get to just go, okay, cool, every card in your hand can be played and utilized on this one turn. But I mean, it's a very specific thing, and honestly, 6 resources is a lot. In most cases, having 6 resources like that is really good for loading items.
Yep.
And if you're loading items, that's awesome. But if you're not loading anything, then
basically mech costs 4 to get out. So my thought was, if there's an option to basically have enough of the hyperdrivers in play and there, this allows me to just basically autoplay the mech theoretically.
Right.
But there's still risk with it. Other weird cards people will probably give me shit over. Potion of Deja Vu. This is kind of like the mulligan card. I think that in this kind of brick to bust kind of a thing, when the goal is to find Nitromechanoid, that this would be a basically putting more of these in the deck means that that is another version of Nitromechanoid theoretically that I have access to. Is that a bad thought process?
How you want to explain that one more time to me?
So, let's say I draw a hand of 4 cards, and I
Uh-huh.
have no Nitromechanoids, but I have 1 Potion of Deja Vu,
Uh-huh.
and I were to put 1 card in Arsenal, at the end of my turn, draw, or basically, I'm sorry, I put Potion of Deja Vu out, 1 card in Arsenal, draw those 2 cards. I don't see a Nitromechanoid. At instant speed, I say, I'm going to destroy Potion Deja Vu, put all cards from my pitch zone on. Oh, pitch! Damn it!
Yeah, they go from pitch, and they also go on the top of your deck. So you're essentially just putting your hand
Oh, damn
that you
it.
pitched
What
back
am I
on
thinking
top.
of that lets me look? I thought there was a mulligan card. I'm doing this totally.
I think
backwards.
what you're thinking of is Hood of
Potion of Luck.
whatever the hell.
Shuffle your hand,
Oh, I
arsenal, and
see.
deck, and draw them together. I had the 2 backwards. Sorry.
I see. I was like, now hold on. I don't know about all that. I know like Hope Merchant's Hood is a card that
Okay.
it's a headpiece that you can destroy at instant speed to take as many cards from your hand, put them into your deck, and then draw a new hand.
This is why my brain was not working. Apologies. That was that piece. So that gives me the put a Potion of Luck in play. 1 card in Arsenal, draw up the end of turn. I've now I've drawn 6 total, right? I'm gonna pop
Right.
that, and I'm gonna go 5 cards deeper. That gives me an 11 card look into my deck on turn 2 or 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how you're looking at it, right? So if I don't find Nitromechanoid in those first couple turns, this is my go find it. Where this is that I would basically, if I got stuck in a scenario where I had to pitch a card that I didn't want to necessarily lose, that was another option to leave this out there. Again, build that board state, have that sitting there so that I can leverage to reclaim that card would be my thought. I think the big winner, in my opinion, is Supercell. This is the one that I saw in Part the Mistveil that I said, this just has, make a Nitromechanoid, all over it. So
Yeah.
put X team counters on X target hyperdrivers, create a hyperdriver with X team counters. So basically, if I were to pay 1, it's 1 steam counter on 1 hyperdriver, and then create another steam driver with another. So that's 2. If it's 3 or greater, shuffle construct Mechanoid from my back dynasty deck. So the idea with this is if it's banished, I can get it back, which I think was one of the boom or bust components of this deck.
Yeah, Supercell is necessary. If your whole thing is trying to get Construct Nitromechanoid, you need to run 3 Supercell. That is a requirement.
Time Snap, obviously, 2 actions. I still think this is super awesome to try to get the extra, resource. So that's kind of the bare bones of some of the ridiculousness. Basic thoughts at this point on where you kind of see my brain trying to go with this. Is this complete asinine, or do you feel like there's an option to hone this in?
I feel like, I guess, like, if it's from a fun perspective of just being like, oh man, I wasn't expecting you to get out Nitromechanoid, you're already telling enough to let me know that you're going to get out Nitromechanoid. So the surprise factor isn't exactly there. The surprises are things like Potion of Luck, and those are neat texts, but like, from a perspective of simply doing like sifts and stuff like that, you could play Sift, right? Sift is a generic that lets you opt X amount of cards or whatever, and then you can search your deck through those means. That way you don't have to give up your arsenal. And a 5-card hand is awesome, but your whole turn will then have to be like just kind of wait it out and see. It's most of your deck will be able to do something efficient, And if your whole thing is just waiting to get a construct nitromechanoid, the first thing you're probably going to do is arsenal it, because you're going to want to keep it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if you're gonna want to keep it, Command and Conquer's a card, and that card is going to ruin your entire strategy. And like anybody who knows that they're going to go up against a construct nitromechanoid deck is going to target that arsenal heavy. And I'm talking like pummels, like anything of that regard to make sure that's the case. But I mean, if you also want to make sure you have enough hyperdrivers, right? Because it doesn't matter how early you get construct nitromechanoid, it's about how quickly you are able to get hyperdrivers out, keep those hyperdrivers out, while also presenting damage. Or if your whole thing is just trying to block, and you're just like, cool, I'll just block everything and then wait for the opportunity to strike with nitromechanoid, you will oftentimes just be blown out of the water, because your opponent will be able to present so much, and you'll only really be able to block with, like, let's just assume you block 12, right? So if you're blocking 12 on most cases, but opponents can present like 20, you're taking 8 damage nearly every turn on average, which means that by the time you finally find nitromechanoid, that's one less card you're not going to block with. So then you can just put it in arsenal.
But my question is there a way to provide? I mean, in my head, in a weirdly perfect world, you have a go again capable. Because I guess right now, nitromechanoid does not have native go again.
Correct.
So you need the action points.
Correct.
So the original way I had approached this was leveraging a card like, where'd it go? High Octane to give me additional action points.
Yep.
Or sit there with, a time snap potion or something to give me one, so that I can come in for more than one attack in that turn, right? Because the power behind, I think, nitromechanoid is you have to have a way to come in for 3 different or 4 different, like, theoretically, right, you have the legs, the chest, the arms. Let me go back here. The legs, 3 mechanoid, 3 of the hyperdrivers. So at that point, you basically only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shots. Now, if we morph this into a Teklovasen build, you actually, when you banish these, get an extra 4, because you have bases and evos.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if anybody's thought about trying to do that, but then you really are kind of shoehorning a nitro into a Mechanologist deck, and I don't know if that even works.
I would say that you could run it in Teklo, but something that is really important is the fact that Teklovasen's what do you call it?
Isn't it called Necropotence or something? Or?
It is. It's not going to pop up under here though, because you're building a deck for -IO, and you're trying to look for.
Oh, they lock it down like that?
Yeah. You can go to cards up at the top of the screen, and now you can look it up. There you go. So Singularity is just so good. It's just such a good card, because you get to do you're doing all the same things as nitromechanoid would.
But you can only have one in your deck.
You can only have one in your deck, that is correct, but you only need one, because if you block efficiently, you don't boost, because if you boost away your Singularity, you're done for. So you just block efficiently, build up your evos, and the evos are really important here, because if you look up stuff like the Evo Soul equipment pieces or whatever, When those get equipped to something else, uh, the the effect happens as well, along with when they're changing. So let me get the actual like cards up here. Evo Soul. So for instance, if you're able to get the Evo Soul Steel Soul Memory, which is the headpiece, that Temper 3 headpiece for Teklevosin, which is Majestic, if when this transforms from or into an Evo with a different name, which is what it's doing when Teklevosin takes this and puts it underneath the Mechropotent, your hero gets +1 intellect until end of turn. And if that Evo is a hero, instead this triggers twice, which means that you get to then draw 5 cards at the end of your turn because you got this into the hero, right? You put it under a hero. The same thing goes for the chess piece. The chess piece says that when this transforms from or into an Evo with the same name, gain 3 resources. If it's under a hero, triggers twice. And then you'll gain 6 resources directly off of doing this. So your initial turn with Teklevosin is huge because you get to quite literally get, if you have the entire suite of the Evo Steel Soul equipment, when you activate Singularity and you put all of your stuff underneath Teklevosin, you get to draw 5 cards at the end of your turn. You get 6 resources. You get 2 action points. And then you can put 2 attack action cards with 6 or more power from your graveyard into your deck, 5th from the top. You can put 2 of those cards in there. So you recur these big Evo cards from your graveyard, put them back into your deck. You get 2 action points, 6 resources, and 5 cards to draw at the end of your turn, all while making this change here. And not to mention the fact that you can banish 2 cards from your soul to attack, and pay 3 and banish 2 to attack for 6. That's already incredibly powerful. Strictly based off the level of the fact that if you do things like high octanes for any reason, right, you're not going to be boosting. So I guess theoretically high octane is not a thing you're going to be doing, but you can still attack with this. If you have any of your cards go again, you can just swing with Teklevosin for 6. And then when you attack a hero, they have to discard a card. So it's not when this hits, it's when it attacks. So you're already providing an insane amount of disruption based on that. Your mech attacks go again, which means that those Evo upgrade cards like War Machine and liquid steel something or other. There's a few others. Those go again, which means that your cards you don't have to worry about your cards not having boost because they'll all already have go again, and you won't have to worry about getting cards into your banish zone. And you already have all 4 equipped, so all of those cards like War Machine they get those buffs based on how many Evos you have equipped. As long as you are Teklevosin the Mechropotent, they get all the effects based off of that. So there's a lot.
I bought a bunch
to this.
of these random. This was like, I bought heavy artillery promos, soup up promos. I guess I found a young Teklevosin. I hadn't found a new one. But I realized, because I thought you could run shadow cards, so I got the jack-o'-lanterns, but apparently, because technically it's not a shadow.
Yeah.
You can't really run
he's a shadow mechanologist demi-hero, but he's only that when he's in there, and so you can't do that in deck construction.
Yeah, I was trying. I know.
Yeah, but I think honestly, like that, like no shame to construct Nitromechanoid, because I think it's a really fun thing, and it's easy to get done in Max pretty efficiently. If you high octane boost, make Nitromechanoid attack. Like 5, 10, 15 additional damage on top of it because of those action points. That's really, really good. And theoretically, you can do that in Dash.io as well. But I feel like getting Teklevosin online, playing that Singularity when you have all of this set up, and your life lead is pretty high because you spent most of your time blocking and getting your armor set up, and then eventually just playing Singularity, going in for the kill, and just like everything provides so much disruption to their opponents. that it's so incredibly difficult to stop. So
And
it's
that's where I'm
it's
torn.
nice.
I like the Teklavos and stuff too, but I thought the only reason I thought Nitro Mechanoid would work actually better in Dash IO is because you get to look at the top card of your deck at any time, and then basically it automatically lets you rip that, basically that hyperdriver right off the top, and then you're playing it for 2. So, yeah, it costs a little bit more, but you're almost always guaranteed to have that hyperdriver. If you run into, well, it's actually, I'm going to specify the reason this is really interesting is that it says, oh, just it's a mechanologist item. It's not, okay, so it's not specifically items in general. It won't work for these two
No,
here.
yeah, only mechanologist items.
I think it'd be fun to run these too, because opt-in would be...
that'd be great to pop in some of the most expensive cards just for a Nitro Mechanoid deck. That's funny.
Let me just, I banished a heart. Oh, shit. All right, hold on.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I guess I don't get go again.
It's like...
And that's the other thing too, right? Is like if you happen to banish the hyperdrivers because of your boosting, then it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you cannot provide any kind of damage outside of being in Nitro Mechanoid. And then not to mention the fact that all of the generics that you're running, or anything that isn't a mechanologist, right? If you are trying to play high octane, boost to get 3 action points, and then go in for 15 more damage with Construct Nitro Mechanoid, you need to make sure that you do not have a generic card on the top of your deck. Otherwise, you just lose. Like,
sure.
you're just not, you waste those action points that you gained with high octane to then and try it again. And so,
this is why
even if you're able to look at the top, it doesn't help.
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to understand if this is, as much as it's a meme kind of thing, I think the goal was how can you get Nitro Mechanoid out as absolutely fast as freaking possible. And that's been the struggle for me, is there's got to be an interesting solution to make it to where this card can come out efficiently, and I can be able to use it in a pressure scenario faster. Or then, like you said, then it's just more interesting to go with Teklavos, because if I were to go and look at Teklavos and create a version of it, he's going to want to run probably different. Well, are these are base, aren't they?
The Cogworks are base, if I recall. Yes.
Is there a word base?
So what I'm going to send you, I don't know if you even know that this deck list exists, but
Probably.
I'm going to send you real quick.
Is it a Discord message?
Yeah. This is from the battle-hardened first place deck that was on Max the Hype Nitro that won a battle-hardened, and their whole thing is they have Construct Nitro Mechanoid. And the whole concept is to just provide an insane amount of damage, get your hyperdrivers out, put steam counters on hyperdriver, and then when you're able to do crazy things like play high octane and do all those boosting, one, everything in your deck is a mechanologist card, so you're going to get a boost every single time, and then you'll have the resources to construct Nitro Mechanoid, where you can go ahead and pop that sucker out there and come in and attack for 15 and
so why are they
just
not
do some
running
nuts
any
things.
hyperdrivers in main deck?
Because Max can make Max can just make hyperdrivers.
Yeah, I get that, but I figured you'd still want to. So maybe that's where my hang-up is I would still think you'd actually want to physically run copies of that. All right, let's look at this one. So you got Nitro Max. So they got the Coglergs leg option, one of the two. So I'm assuming Arcane Barrier. That's probably why that's in there, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
How can you banish a hyperdriver from boosting if you're only making tokens of it?
Well, the thing is, you're not banishing hyperdrivers. You don't need to banish hyperdrivers to play Construct Nitro Mechanoid. So if with Hyper X3, it's more so that it's a battle worn 1 and blocking 1, so that way you can keep it around. But you're not going to be putting any hyperdrivers underneath this.
Okay.
So the concept there is that it just blocks 1 and prevents a little bit more there.
But this also is going to use pistol, which I think is going to go away soon.
Pistol is going to go away soon. Theoretically, you can just play Banksy instead. Pistol is mainly just another one of those things that allows you to just provide a lot of shooting. But you can just play Banksy instead. Or I mean, yeah, you're probably just going to want to play Banksy. But overall, the weapon is mainly just there for equipping for Nitro. And Banksy also allows you to put a counter when it hits. You're able to put a counter on something with crank, and all of your hyperdrivers have crank. So that's going to force your opponent to have to block it. Otherwise, you're just going to get more counters on your hyperdrivers.
It's amazing that this deck is almost 90, I would say mostly commons, rares.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the perk of Mechanologist, is that Mechanologist, a lot of the good stuff in their decks are just base level. They're base level commons. They get stuff done. I mean, Twin Drive's probably the most expensive card in the deck. This deck is very efficient for what it does, and it costs $380 on TCG Player, which is insane compared to when you look at other decks that are $800 to $1,000. This one will cost you $380. You probably own most of the cards for this already. So
yeah, I very much own I own everything in this.
Right. So theoretically, you could slap this together, and this is exactly what you want to do. Because also the other thing is that, at least personally, I think getting Nitro Mechanoid out early doesn't win you the game. I think getting Nitro Mechanoid out when your opponent is under 20 life is what wins you the game, because you want it to be something that because it's a very, very powerful card, and if you risk all of your defensive value on your equipment, and you risk your attacks that you could be making with your weapon, and you risk all of your time spent getting hyperdrivers onto the board strictly to get this out turn 4, the second you run out of cards to use on Construct Nitro Mechanoid, you're kind of just boosting and hoping for the best. And that's still efficient, sure, but at some point you're going to run out of cards on Construct Nitro Mechanoid. So you want it to be, because you're going to be putting what? You're going to be putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 cards underneath Construct Nitro Mechanoid. So if you're putting 8 cards underneath Nitro Mechanoid, then you have 8 attacks, which can theoretically be anywhere between 3 to 4, maybe even 5 turns worth of attacks that you can have saved up and ready for this. And not to mention the fact it's got blocking potential too, which is great. But it is really about just making sure that you're able to continuously swing this over and over, and you want that pressure to be more effective in the late game than in the early game, because in the early game all your opponent just needs to do is say, okay, I block, all right, you're out of stuff for Construct Nitro Mechanoid, you can't make another one.
Well, and so think about this, you have at this stage, right, it would be if the materials underneath it, it's 8 times 6 is your attack value.
Right. So yeah, and you have that available to you, and it costs you nothing. It quite literally just costs you a card underneath it to attack for 6, and it's got overpower, which is great. But I mean, at the end of the day, you'll be able to provide pressure, but what you're giving up early is like all of your armor, right? The effectiveness of your Teklo Foundry hearts. If you still have block value on your Galvanic Bender and your Hyper X3, you're going to want to use that block value on there too. You're still going to want to present a lot more damage. Normally, you don't want to go in for those really big bursty turns until the like second cycle of the game, where your opponent's sitting at like under 20 life, and you're like, okay, it's time to provide a bunch of damage. Because if at that point it's zipper hit red into twin drive into rev up or something, and you have all these hyper drivers on the board, so you at least have a bunch of resources at the beginning of it. You just knock them all out of there, and then you get the resources from the hyper drivers. You then use the 3 floating resources from the hyper drivers plus like a red to get out your construct nitro mechanoid. And if you played high octane in the beginning, you can just, all those boosts that you've done will now effectively give you 6, 12, 18 damage, right? If you're attacking with all 3 of them from your nitro mechanoid. And that's oppressive. 18 damage from one card after you had just tried dealing, what is that? 5, 10, 16 damage with 3 boost cards. That's a lot. And so there is definitely the ability to make it happen. And because Max can just make hyperdrivers, you're always at least going to have that backup plan of like, oh, if Construct Nitro Mechanoid can't happen for any reason, you at least have consistency in your deck to make it to where you're sitting at like, okay, cool, like I can still at least do a good amount of things with my hand.
I didn't realize they even had all this, the results with how many matches,
Mm-hmm.
this is, it almost takes some of the fun out of stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, it's neat to see this.
Yeah, that's the I don't know how distant you've been out of Classic Constructed, but this is all people in Classic Constructed care about are the statistics of the deck and how it performs, because that way they know that they can copy it and then bring it to their locals and win an armory with it.
I walk up, or my decks, all my crazy ones I have that are probably well outdated and not useful, are physical decks on the side. And I at one point tried to be the nice person when you saw some of my early decks that I created, which was the the Blitz decks before people started making those available, or LSS, right? I tried making these. I didn't even know, maybe people, I mean, some people looks like they might have used it, but yeah, since I'm not officially related to anybody, it's interesting to see people even use that. So they copied it. It's kind of neat.
Yep.
What's the oldest deck I have here? I'm just curious. So, gotta go fast. Does this have any stats? Probably because this is a copy. That's probably why.
Yeah, if you also don't, if your deck list is not set to be public, nobody can see it. So if it's only set to link only, then you're the only one who's going to be able to see it. Public deck lists are posted for people to look at, but overall, it's if you just have them as link only, then it stays that way. Yeah, like there's a whole bunch. Like if you want to talk about like sheer efficiency, about like getting your nitro out and like how to do that, then by all means, right, you're gonna want to choose a hero that's able to do that super efficiently. And instead of waiting for those hyper drivers that are in your deck to be made or to be brought to the top so you could flip them with -IO, instead you can just boost a card and then just make them with Max. And I feel like that's pretty effective. They're also especially when you boost them, things like Crankshaft and Big Bertha and stuff.
Sounds like my internet might be having a problem again.
Error. Hello.
I think my internet did something funny. Are you back?
Yep, I'm here.
Yay. Sorry.
You've been kind of like slowly in and out every now and again, but nothing like absolutely insane. But sometimes it's like longer than a couple seconds. So
yeah, everything has been really weird since last week with internet here. I don't know why. It's
time to call your ISP.
Is there a Teklevossen winning style deck that people have, tried to aspire to?
No. Not that I'm aware of. I think you could probably find. I usually just tend to look at like one of the more recent ones. That block and boost one might actually be. Well, I don't know if they're gonna.
So here's the other question: is there a way to see, like, if I wanted to look for okay, obviously somebody has played a crap ton of games with this. How do I know? Like, why are some of these played this much? Or how do I find, like, the most played deck? Is there a way to do that?
Let me see. I think, yes. If you go to the stats thing up at the top of the screen,
let's learn.
It says most played decks.
Okay.
And so right there, you'll see the most played deck. One of the most played decks is Lupine Fiasco's Rosetta KO list. And then
why?
There's an Azuri contract, probably just because there are, at least oftentimes, you'll see a lot of these are decks that content creators made. Lupine Fiasco's a content creator who does some stuff for YouTube, and I follow him, and he's does some pretty great stuff. He does the daily fab stuff. And so daily fab for him means he's at least getting one game in with each of these decks every day if he's testing for them. And then the people who are watching his channel are also more than likely taking those decks and going, hey, I want to try this.
Wow.
So there's a lot. It's funny because if you go back to that stats list, this deck right here has actually it's been played more. The most played deck on February for the longest time was actually the deck played by Levi Rausch, who was on Azalea. And so if you go back to that stats thing there, you'll see there is an Azalea list right in the middle there. Scroll down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. That deck was the most played deck on Talishar on February for a long time. And now it looks like because Lupine Fiasco, he does a lot of games. I'm like a lot of practicing. So it's not only his own builds that he's playing this deck on, but he's also all the people who are watching him, all the people who are looking at this exact list and going, "Oh, hey, that's a pretty powerful list that you got there. Maybe we should try it out." They just go ahead and give that a shot. So this is, in a way, the way to find out what decks are played the most. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they're the most efficient, but they're played the most, and it tells you what their rate of winning is based on the amount of wins they have.
That seems like the highest Teklo deck is that block and boost.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot. I mean, if you're looking for like stats,
weirdly enough, maybe it's
I mean, he only does
deck tech videos. I guess maybe that's
why. He only really does YouTube content, and it's called the Daily Fab. Lupine Fiasco is his channel name, but Daily Fab is what he does, and he posts a video of him playing on Talishar every day on his channel based on whatever he wants to learn. Right now he's pretty high on Aurora, so he's doing a lot of Aurora testing, but he was big on KO when KO released, and so he made a lot of videos on that. And that was his testing, is that he gets online, He makes a whole bunch of videos, and he plays games on Talishar, and then he reviews his gameplay from that on his videos, and that is his schedule. I mean, he just does that for every day. So he gets a lot of reps in, which is why his decks are so why they're so played, right?
Yeah, he has never showed up on any of my YouTube suggestions, oddly enough.
I mean, it is only classic constructed, so unless you're specifically looking for most classic constructed things, it probably isn't showing up. But yeah, but there's a lot of things
just shows
too.
there's not. I mean, yeah, there's no way to know who all's in the scene because there's just a lot of people.
There's a lot, and the fun fact, I don't know if you know this, but you can also find the people in the scene on February as well. You know about the content creation thing there?
That's only if they've applied to put themselves in there, though. Not everybody's in there, I don't think. This has changed a lot, too. Oh, look, I exist.
That's you. That's you. And there's only like a finite amount that are on this page. Like you can change it however, right? Like there's whenever you're doing your content creator stuff for February, you can just add your info to it, and then people can find you based on your filter and just be like, okay, what do they want? What do they cover, right? Do they cover casual gameplay? Like you can click on casual, and everything under the casual side of things pops up as content creators. Like I pop up under casual, there I am. And then pretty much everybody who's just like in that same realm. So it's nice if you're looking for people, but the February is a great tool for people who are just looking to like get an idea about how a deck plays, or like what results are being played. But at the end of the day, just make a deck that you feel you're comfortable with and that you want to try out, and then just like test. I put like a litmus test at like 10 games, and if I'm not comfortable with the deck after 10 games, or it just doesn't feel like right, I'll maybe change a couple of things and see if things have changed. And if I like it better afterwards, I'll play 10 more games. And if I like how that went, then I'll keep the deck list as is. If not, I'll change more things. I'll change a hero. I'll change deck style or however it might be, and it ends up working out just fine. So it's really just about practice. It's really the big thing when it comes to
what is this meta tab all about? I guess now that I've changed this video into exploring Fabry here, why do people care about this so much?
So this essentially just goes to show how many people, because a higher win rate has people assume that the deck is like crazy good. So what this is
Dash
is
sucks into to max apparently.
Yeah, Dash.io into Max Hype Nitro. There are not a lot of games in which Dash has won against Max, and these are all from just whatever games are played on Talishar. I'm going to be entirely honest. A lot of this is not correct data, right?
100%. Phi wins 100% against Bravo. Can't win.
Yeah, like, well, because is it Phi? I think it's Bravo wins into Phi. Is that correct?
That's what I'm trying to figure out how this works. What's the key? What goes into what?
Let me see here. Dude, does it say up on the thing here?
Most played.
Maybe not. Never mind.
This is most played.
Guess not.
Who's the most played? That makes sense that row is most played.
Yeah. So most played, I think it's the heroes on the left and their matchups into the heroes on the right. So like Aurora has a 50% win rate into Aurora, and then Aurora has a 52% win rate into Azalea. But what I'm gonna say is that while a lot of these games are like, a lot of this data is very true to what it's supposed to be.
Oh, Teklo versus Olympia.
Yep, he kills him. And it's the thing is that unfortunately, if let's say for instance somebody's client crashes and they have to leave the game, that counts as a win. And so in a real game scenario, like a real life scenario, you would never have somebody's game just crash. So a lot of the data that comes up from these are not it's strictly, you know, whether it be rage quitting or people just getting upset with the client or people wanting to dodge heroes whenever they're playing or maybe somebody had something else they had to go do and they had to leave in the middle of the match. Like all of these factors come into play when a game is put into the data for the wins and losses of a hero.
Data doll wannabe.
Oh, it's an updated Dash IO deck.
Well, I just don't know why they call it Data doll wannabe.
Probably because it's about getting items from the top of your deck, like Data Doll does.
Celebrating processor. Versions. Interesting. Oh, so they. Oh, that's.
Yeah, because you can split it into different versions and do that too. And there's even like a matchups thing. I'm curious if they have this. So right above the name of the deck, it should say default matchup. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So click on that. This tells you this is a list of each iteration of sideboard you should choose based into what hero you're going against. So you can just quite literally choose like Dash, and it's like, cool, okay, this is what this person has put in there for Dash, which is preferred turn order is no preference. You're going to want 62 cards in your deck. Those are the cards you're going to take out of your deck to make it, to make it where it's supposed to be. So you're going to take out Achilles Accelerator for the Cogworks.
Maybe this is why I've avoided Fabry, is like this to me seems almost stifling. Like this is basically net decking on steroids.
Well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, with all TCGs, net decking is exactly what's going to happen. Like, this is a database of people who are able to take, pros who are able to put in their reps for their decks, and then those reps get published to Talishar, where people can go, oh, hey, that deck looks like it's performing okay. I should try it out. But then that person goes to try it out, and let's say they're just not as good of a player, they're going to count it as a loss, right? So like you see that win rate says it's 45%. That win rate could theoretically be higher, but the reason it's low is because you have to imagine that not everybody who picks up this deck immediately knows how to play it, knows what lines to play, knows the efficiency of certain cards over others, when to use Dash's ability and when not to. So the data is in most cases
seems very
skewed.
I was going to say in general, because you hand this deck to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, or even if I were to play Icelander as a good example, I'd lose every single game I'd play because I don't know how to play that hero.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just come in here and
if you took that same deck and you put in 200 reps on that hero, I think you'd know how to play her. And so
but couldn't
that's
the
where this
opposite
comes
be true?
from.
Couldn't somebody crash the stats on this? Like, let's just pick on this deck. Couldn't somebody come in here and I could purposely lose 200 games over the next week or two to make this deck look worse?
Yeah, absolutely. You could. But that's what the problem, right? That's the problem. That's why I don't like Talishar. That's why I don't like the statistics of Talishar, is because things like that can happen. And if they do, it is not effective towards showing the real thing. That's why if I'm a content creator and my content is to make these decks and show you how to use them, then I am, one, teaching my audience how to do it, and I'm at least showing that from my because if I put in 1,000 reps on a deck and I perform poorly every single time when I'm playing that, and then publishing a video of showing me playing that, that's on me being like, I'm bad, I'm a bad player, and I'm going to continue being bad for no reason. But most of these reps on this deck specifically are from the creator and not from just players. So it's a wider range of data, and not all of it is like the best example of how good this deck is. But it's all based on, whatever is happening at the time, and you want to make sure that the data is as accurate as can be. And I think that's where...
I feel like we should play an Icelander against it. There's no results. We could be the only one.
Well, you can't play Icelander into it.
I know.
But yeah, no, I mean, that's it. I think at the end of the day, right, like, if you're not big into the statistics and the min-maxing and the the pure, number value game of flesh and blood, and you're just like, I just kind of want to do this fun thing, then like Fabrary is not like the place for you to go to look at stats, because it shouldn't matter. At that point, what you should do is you should go to like fabrec.gg, and they give you like a list of cards that are really popular within certain heroes that are like, hey, like these cards are normally run. Like, if you're playing Dash, you're probably playing Spark of Genius or Teclocore, right? Because they're Dash specializations, and that's big on her. If you're playing Dash IO, you're probably playing Boom Grenades, because Boom Grenades are a big thing for her. So it's, there's a way to like look into being like, I'm not sure what cards I should play into this. But if you're just trying to like do fun jank things, then Talishar is just a place for you to put the deck so you remember what's in it, and not so much like...
So this is saying like, what are the statistics of me in a 60 card deck with 3 copies of a card and my hand size of 4? Am I gonna... That is like less than 1 in 81% for me to get. Like, is that what this is talking about?
A lot of these are counting for like cards that you are looking at. Like, if you're looking for like a hypogeometric calculator for like, what are the odds of you getting the cards you need, or like certain copies of a card you need in your hand.
So for me to get Nitro Mechanoid in CC, there's 3 copies. It's saying that I have an 81% chance to get it in a 60 card deck.
Yeah, you have a less than 1 in 81% chance, or less than 1 in 81% chance to get a Nitro Mechanoid in your 4 hands. But like, or is that greater? I can't remember what the symbols are off the top of my head. But that's just overall, like, if it's 3 cards in your 80, you get into the statistics of it all and the mathematics, and it's just like your probable odds is essentially what this calculator does for you.
Interesting.
Yep. And you can see that all even if like you go to a deck and you find it, like the stats list of a deck, right? You can simply just go and so like you're in the stats list here, right? So you can see even on the right side, it shows you how many cards in your deck have greater than 6 power and how many cards in your deck have greater than 5. And if you're KO, greater than 5 is still 6. So that's the things you're looking for. It also tells you your hand draw probabilities of like, what are the odds that you're going to draw 4 red cards in your hand, and that percentage is 2%, right? It's a 2% chance that you're going to draw 4 reds in your hand. It's a 0% chance that you're going to draw all, 4 yellows in your hand, and it's a 1% chance that you're going to draw all blues. But
so if I shuffled for 10 years and drew this deck constantly, that supposedly I'd never be able to have a hand of all 4 yellows?
I mean, like, I'm sure at some point, right, the statistics are pretty okay in that matter, but like probability is, it means it's probably not actually, it's like 0.03 or 0.3%. So you have a 0.3%. So it's not impossible, but it's improbable. This is like a numbers junkie like dream is Fabrary, because you get into the nitty-gritty statistics of it all if you're trying to make it.
I love like trying to make data work, because that's something that I do in my day job, but I just, for some reason, I feel like putting too much numbers into this takes the fun out of it in some way. I'm not saying it's totally taking the fun out of it, but it's just, I guess I did not ever I was just using Fabrary to, I think, build a deck, and then you'd use, Talishar to link the deck ID and play it. But that was 2 year and a half ago. Aside from when I did this, where's my decks? My decks. So is this me? Yeah. So I said buy. Okay, that was in January. Look at that. November of 23. Truly, I think the last time I was in here was I copied some decks for UPF. Most of these were UPF, and that was back, I think that was probably the coaxing back then when I was looking around for some of this stuff. So I really have not, honestly, I haven't probably logged into Talishar in about a year, probably.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
I
and
take
you
that
know,
back. I think I tried using the content creating tool, so I don't want to lie, but like I truly didn't use any of the features. Really, it looks like so.
yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, if the real reason it's there is because from a competitive standpoint, if you're trying to fine tune your deck to be as effective as it possibly can be from a competitive like tournament standpoint, these numbers are incredibly important when it comes to determining how effective your deck is. But if you are a casual player who just wants to jam a game of UPF every now and again, those numbers don't matter to you, and they shouldn't matter to you because that's not your it's not your MO, right? That's not what you're planning to do with the decks that you play.
I should make a Count Your Blessings Nitro Mechanoid deck just to
You
piss
should
somebody
do
off.
it. Do it. Make a Count Your Blessings UPF Nitro Mechanoid deck.
That'd be hilarious.
Do it. Easy. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's silly jank. That's the silly jank people are running into these days, is the fact that you throw 9 copies of Count Your Blessings at any one of your classic constructed decks, and it's probably going to just be okay. Because you gain, like, I think what, like, the number is like 48 life or something total off of like the entirety of if you use every single copy.
That's
like,
why I wanted the whiteboard that's behind me. This is why I wanted to start doing some of that, because some of the things that we didn't. Can I bring up MS Paint? Like, oh look, I can kind of show some of what I want to show. So like there is this very odd phenomenon that I want to make a whole video on that is not for today's video, but like there is, that is very zoomed in. Holy crap. This is why Paint is the worst for this. But like if you were to say like that is, let's say your class. Holy bejesus.
My gosh. Are you blind, Jacob? What's going on?
I am having a day, man. It's so like let's say that's your class circle. And then
right.
you talk. One of the other things I've been looking into is like, okay, now you have a class, but then okay, to define a card within a verticality, you have another restriction. So maybe this one is talent, and then let's say you wanted to get even more critiquey, right? Like to overlap this, then you would have another box, and this is why I wanted to spend a lot more time on this, but then like that would be like, let's call that the keyword legendary or whatever. So this way that the only way for, if you have a card that's a generic, it can go with everybody, right? So like there's this weird, I wanted to kind of have this like zoom in thing of all the different stuff that like kind of showcased how they're locking cards behind different talents and keywords, and that they don't affect other classes, so like they can develop within that lane and give that class some identity, but then some other. So that's like one of the things in the back of my mind I've been trying to map out is.
Gotcha.
I thought about using like an old projector with those like the ones you can like put them on top of each other, and then like the paper like. I know I'm old, but like that's what I was thinking.
Stack the sheets in front of the lens to.
Yeah, like that was my thought. Was there's got to be an interesting way I could be like, okay, we're going to talk about the dichotomy of how Flesh and Blood, allocates restrictions within the system, and we're going to talk about here's your first bubble. The first bubble is the class bubble. Then you have the talent bubble, which dissects the class bubble. Then you have like your different classes, and you can put one that says like here's your ninja, here's your mech, and then you can see that they don't overlap. And I feel like this would be a fantastic, awesome video if done right. But it's the problem is just doing the graphics correctly.
Well, best of luck to you, because let me tell you, I don't think I have even an iota of brain power to be able to think of a diagram to best explain that. All I know is it's like, cool, if you want to play warrior with an extra amount of card pool and able to utilize the soul keyword, play Bolton. If you want to play any other warrior that just attacks with their weapons and doesn't attack with attack actions in most cases, you can play Dorinthia or Kasai or Olympia, or you can play all four of these with only generics. nothing else, and a completely different deck off the top of it.
I heard completely different deck. I'm assuming the internet is doing its thing again. Gonna find out what's not working. Are we back yet? I think we're back.
Like all concept of that your decks can be different. Yep. I mean, I hear you. So can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, I have
Hello.
500 download and 30 upload, so I feel like I should have a good connection. Or now I'm at 15, so something weird. Like I said, it's just kind of buggy.
I mean, you're also like, I mean, screen sharing normally is a pretty big thing, but like you're not really screen sharing. You're just like you're just on Discord. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. I don't know as far as these things are concerned. You're not streaming or anything, so shouldn't be anything there. But I do know you were dealing with internet issues a couple weeks ago. So
I was Dr. Roboto. Apparently, there's lots of internet outages according to Down Detector, but that's a whole other ball of wax. This, by the way, this chart I'm on here, now that we're back to chatting, this is the closest to that I've discovered. So, like, a good example is looking at Mechanologist, right? You have Mechanologist, the class, then you have equipment, and then you have weapons, and you have, heroes. But that doesn't really explain the things like the, can only be put in your deck if blah, blah, blah. That's what I wanted to try to get into. It just seemed like a pretty interesting topic.
Well, and that's like it's like Mechanologist is a little hard to do because there's no talent for that. But if you look at something like Ninja, Ninja has I think it's right next to Mechanologist. Yeah. So like there's class, which is the Ninja. Then there's Mystic of 45, and then 54 Draconics. And then there's just regular ninja equipment as well. So,
and then theoretically, again, when you start looking at class ninja, if you look for anything that has keywords like that would exist in other items, is there a legendary? Is there go again? Is there can only be played like specialization is another one, right? So specialization is kind of like a legendary, but it's specific to the hero. But
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you're able to get a lot on there for sure. So, looks like I got to upload another video to February.
Yeah, I didn't use as much. Man, content creation is hard. It really is.
It's really just a lot happening all at once, and I'm totally understanding.
Sick. It really sucks when you get, I don't want to say discouraged, but so my mom, congratulations if she ever happens to find this in the wild yonder internet, retired from her NICU job at a hospital earlier this week. So she put in many years. I think it was 22 years of service at this hospital. So that was exciting. So now she's getting to live the retired life. But things like that, don't get me wrong. I could have made some content this week, but there was that. I have a friend that currently is dealing with some family issues that now I have become an impromptu person that is managing his property for him while he is going to be traveling across the United States to go deal with I think the word is hospice individual.
I see.
The end of life kind of stuff. So life is just busy, and it's no unrelenting component. So it's like I really want to just be like, hey, let's crank out content, but it's every time I get to that thought, it's like, nope, life smack.
The end of the day, it is about what you put into it, and as long as your content is something that is true to yourself, it shouldn't matter about you're not it's not like YouTube is just sitting here like, oh yeah, like if you don't upload a video a day, it's a problem and you're never gonna make it here. Like there are people who upload 1 3-hour long video every 2 weeks and they are doing just fine, and that is totally okay. right? It's, you do what you can, because at the end of the day, it's just what it is. So
I am just still excruciatingly impressed that I'm going to go back to Live in Tea, and I'm just going to give a slow clap. 2 videos, and the first video was 3 weeks ago. The second video was 2 weeks ago, and already almost at 1,000 subscribers. Like, just
nice.
mind blowing how like there are certain editing techniques and things that people just really are driven toward.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, as much as I love making my podcast, I'm not like banking on my podcast. I know my community enjoys my podcast a lot, and the things I have to talk about, and that's meaningful when they come and contact me and they're like, hey, I really enjoyed the chat that we had, and I am very community centric, so I like to speak with my community pretty frequently and stuff like that. But overall, I'm just making my podcast because I like to talk about topics, and that's just what I do. And I don't have to think as much when I'm making a video like that. If I want to put more effort into a video, I will. I have a video where I'm doing a breakdown of a master set for Rosetta, and that requires a lot of editing and things like that I'm going into.
Yeah.
So it's a lot going into that, and it's not like those videos are not done like my talking head videos, but I've come to find out that a lot of people enjoy my talking head videos, and so because they enjoy it, I will gladly continue making them. But that's not going to stop me from straying off to other things like gameplay of formats that people don't maybe not know of, right? Like Clash needs to get more videos out there for that. When we eventually start looking at things like Brawl and making videos for Brawl, that would be super fun. Then even just doing Commoner, and it'll be great.
I think I've kind of discovered there's a couple of things, right? Like Flesh and Blood is currently my main jam, and I really enjoy, like, face it, I know I am dabbling in a lot of TCGs. So there's Altered TCG, there's Lorcana, there's Star Wars Unlimited, there's Flesh and Blood. I know that I demoed Union Arena, Grand Archive, some other various ones. There's Sorcery, just had their release of something. You have what's the other ones that are around here? Sorcery's there, Altered, Battle Pets, Neodome. There is just a billion things, and it's, oh my gosh, there's literally not enough time, effort, and days to keep up with all of it. Like, and I definitely am trying. I'll tell you, like, I've been trying to listen to like what's happening with MetaZoo, the recovery of that, and see what's happened. There's a lot of stuff.
A lot going on. It's one of those things. If you're willing to keep up with that content, that's great. But at the end of the day, I am very much so one to be like, if I want to cover Grand Archive on my channel, do I have the opportunity to talk about meta takes and my favorite cards and decks I'm building and art and collecting for Grand Archive on top of doing Flesh and Blood? Absolutely not. Because like I already am trying to juggle my day to day, and then also on top of it, any personal life. I've got my girlfriend who we go out and do stuff on the weekends, and so I'm not just going to be like, oh yeah, no, sorry, like, babe, I'm not going to do this. I have to go make content. Like, it's not that important. And as much as I love my community and I want to make sure that they're providing content, I'm not just some machine that pumps out content, and they know that.
Machines,
right? So they know that. They know that's not the case, and so I don't want it to be this. I make that very clear in several of my videos that, like, I like making content as an education purpose to teach people how to play, teach people how to get into the game, and also give tips and advice on how to use certain cards in certain ways. And that's my big thing, being a promoter and a supporter of a game that I enjoy. And, I don't need to be some figurehead. I don't need to be a pro player. Like, if I win an armory, I'm stoked. I don't even care about a pro quest or, a calling or a battle hardened or anything. I just want to be able to play the game and vibe with people in the community. And that's my whole thing. So it's I don't know. It's just one of those things. You got to make it very clear to yourself and set your own boundaries when you're doing content creation that you're not something that's just supposed to wake up in the morning, sit down and make content, because if you do that, you're going to run out of content to make. And it's not you're going to run out and you're going to go, "Oh, what the hell do I even do today?" Like, "Oh, I don't even have like a general concept." I'm like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll just figure it out on the fly." And then halfway through, you're in the middle of figuring out on the fly, and you go, "Nope, I didn't like this idea anymore," and you scrap the whole thing.
I
So,
mean, today's, for some reason, I usually have a topic, but like today, again, it's kind of seeming like the tail end of maybe, just life in general, but like just writer's block or whatever, because like that's why I was like, let's talk about Teklavos or building this Nitro Mechanoid deck, because that's the only thing that was on my mind. And I'm like, that's cool. It's an interesting topic, but that's kind of a, I don't want to say it's reaching for straws, but it's really just having a conversation about it, because what format you're looking at. I'm sure building it for Commoner would be completely different, or building it for Clash is completely different, right? When you start cutting out the Majestics and the Legendaries, like your build restrictions get a lot more. So that gets kind of interesting, right? There's all that fun things to consider in the middle of it too.
yeah, there's a lot. That's why I enjoy it. Like a lot of these younger formats is because of the difference in play. It's not slap 3 Command and Conquers and 3 E-Strikes into a deck and then make the rest of them cards that are just good for your class and talent. Instead, it's how do I work my deck around these specific functions? Commoner is a great example because you're only limited to commons. So, you've got people who are running Wounded Blow and freaking Surging Militia and Lead the Charge and uh, what the hell is the other one? Like Warmonger's Rights, or why can't I think of the name of that card? Warmonger's Citadel.
I thought you meant Warmonger's Diplomacy. I'm like, oh, that's another one, but there's probably more Warmongers out there.
Yeah, no, Warmonger's Citadel is I think it's Citadel. It's just a common that says like your next attack gets +3, and then if it hits you, put it back in your deck or something like that. Or your opponent can only do one thing on their turn. I can't remember what it is, but it's like there's just things, right? There's things you would not build your deck the same way that you would for Classic Constructed in Commoner, and I feel like that's just something that is truly a big thing to look at when you see the difference in formats. So that's why I like doing it, because it's, and it translates at least fairly easy. If I take a commoner deck and I add rares into it, I pretty much immediately know what commons to take out to put in good rares for the deck. Because in most cases, it's only like a few rares,
and that goes from
that
Commoner
are
to
like
Clash
key
at that
things
point.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you can add in some Majestics, and then theoretically that would sprinkle it from that into a Blitz deck, or right. I guess technically, and then from there you could add extra cards, and then it would be a CC deck or a UPF deck. And so,
yep.
There's this
how it is.
5-year conversation coming up, I think, from James White. I know that this is supposed to be the celebration of 5 years. It doesn't seem like 5 years, but it's been 5 years. What do you think? There's a lot of people asking questions on Twitter or X or whatever. There's like the whole, what would you ask? I was the de facto person that brought up, PvE/UPF. Is there anything that you'd want to ask in that, or have you even looked at that?
I haven't looked at the thread, but I did see that it popped up. Honestly, there isn't anything I'd ask. I feel like the PvE answer is just going to get met with a no.
I assume the answer is that is what it is. I just think I'm looking for confirmation of the no.
Right. Well, I mean, and again, like, it's a thing that, like, down the pipeline, sure, but like, it's just, I personally believe that PvE should be in the hands of the players, because that's not what Fab is. Fab is not a PvE game. As much as we like to make the connection between classes and talents to Dungeons and Dragons and the worlds and the lore that we live for the set, it's not it's it's not what the game is, right? It's not what it is. And you can make it that with enough brain power and enough, resources to make cool dungeons or make cool enemies for you to fight as a team. And that's something that you can do. And obviously, with the addition of things like, United We Stand being a card that everybody looks at and goes, well, that's PvE. Like, there's no way it isn't PvE.
I
It
think there's
could
going
be
to have to be
PvE.
format specific cards, and that's the other reason. The macro. By the way, the reason that video with the layers of the different drops wanted to be a thing is because the macro card came out, and that was going to be a video in my understanding of saying, hey, this is why this is useful, right? Is saying you could then look at here's what a macro does. It's only available for this, but then if they made another card that was only for PvE, then it restricts it out of the other things. But you could do crazy stuff for us over here, or crazy stuff for Commoner, or crazy stuff for Clash, right? Whether they choose to do that or not, somebody in those formats would want that card, but it doesn't necessarily have to impact the other formats if they do something that's specific to those formats. And I don't know if they will, but that's something that I'm hoping to see in the future. And maybe that's a question I should have asked instead of my will PV be a thing. Like, maybe I should ask, will there be more format specific cards printed? Maybe if you want to add that, that would be a great question to ask. Like, that would be
But I think the answer to that is also no, unfortunately, because I think it's really what it comes down to is that they're not making stuff specifically for any format. They are, if there's one thing they are making things for a format, is they are making sure they're limited for the set is really well done. That is what their core aspect is that out of the box, do you get a good limited experience? And if the answer is yes, then that's a good thing that they've added in there. If those cards that are really good in the limited format are commons that are incredibly powerful, or or like rares that get downshifted to common, if that happens and that changes the commoner format, who cares, right? Like, it's commoner is something that we all in the community are just like, okay, cool. It's a fun thing to play every now and again. My deck's still going to cost like $10 to $20, and most of the time, there's nothing game breaking that's ever really made to the point where it's like, oh yeah, this is it. Like, it's never going to be the same format again. You're not going to get anything that's incredibly busted or anything of the sort. And the same goes for, they're certainly not making anything for Clash, because why would they, right? And if they are making anything, they're going to make good support for classes and talents that exist in the game in Majestics and Legendaries in which they might need, right? Like, these Armory decks are a great example because they get, all these great new tools for their class outside of a main structure deck, or outside of a main set.
So here's a question. I'm sending you a link. This is for TCG Player. It is I went to Flesh and Blood and I searched for product line Flesh and Blood page 1 best selling is what's there. On my screen it shows Grasp of the Arknight. Is that what you see as your number 1 best selling?
No, hold on. Yep, I see it now.
But is that the case? Is that what you shares on yours, or something different?
Yep, yeah, I always have mine set from high to low, but I just set mine to best selling.
I was looking at like best selling to kind of see maybe what's out there, but one of the things that struck me as interesting is some of the best selling cards out there, are these really expensive generics. You got Warmonger's Diplomacy, which is now $75. Holy crap, did not know that. E-Strike, $45 for a light play, and then quickly escalates into the $50+ range. That's interesting. Command and Conquer's back up to about $100 a card, give or take. That's basically the dollar amount you're going to pay on those. Weakest Link is a generic. It's $52 to $60. And then the Balance of Justice is now $125. That's a legendary, but that's actually down from where it was. So my question would be for you, now that I've looked at some of this stuff, how is Fab going to handle what I'm going to refer to as the generic problem long term, where these generic cards seem to always slot into every deck, and that's why they're holding a lot of value. It sounds like they want to get away from the universally beloved generic cards.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, with their the most recent banning that happened with Art of War and all the books that were banned in the same realm, you know, that was strictly a ban on card draw because they knew that these cards were giving too much agency to heroes and the ability to kind of abuse these action points and abuse the what is the core tenet of Flesh and Blood of just like having a 4 to 5 card hand and like giving it your all. And I think if that is the case, card like Command and Conquer is just normal. It's a normal card. Nothing is overtly destructive about the card. I feel like there are cards that have way more intense effects that are out there in the world outside of Command and Conquer, but Command and Conquer is a generic and it's available for every class and every talent, and it is effective, right? If your deck has no means of disruption because you're supposed to be playing, you know, a wizard, you can still utilize Command and Conquer in several ways, even if you're going to put it in a wizard deck, which most people won't. But like, even if you do, it's a popper for illusionists. It's arsenal destruction that your opponent has to like respect, unless of course they have nothing in arsenal. They have nothing in arsenal. It's just 6 damage, right? So your opponent needs to specifically have this card when your opponent has an, you know, or you need to have that card when your opponent has an arsenal, and more specifically, if it's something they want to keep, right? If you put that Construct Nitro Mechanoid in arsenal, if your opponent puts a Blood Rush Bellow in arsenal, if something happens and it's like a key card that they're like, we want to save this for our next turn, if they CNC, it's really, really detrimental. But that's that give and take. And I feel like CNC is great as a card. I think E-Strike is pretty great as a card as far as its like overall access. The problem that gives these cards their price is because they haven't been reprinted. And they will be reprinted in the future if I will put my bottom dollar on that fact.
Adaptive pleating that's now $70. Holy crud, I didn't realize that was that much. That was like a $10 card.
Yep.
For, you know.
I'm telling you, people, especially, the thing is that, and I'm sure I've said this in several of my own videos on top of, I'm sure, several episodes that we've done here, but this is a player's market. And so when new players get introduced who don't have the generics that everybody else does, they get bought, which is why these cards keep going up in price. And then you take a look at all the heroes that are winning. We just got a meta report from the first week of ProQuest. Aurora won like the most ProQuests this weekend. So you'll see a lot of these cards in the best-selling section of TCG Player are lightning cards that go inside Aurora. And then Earth, right? Verdance and Florian are doing very well. So Felling of the Crown, which is an incredibly powerful card in Earth, that goes ahead and pops in there. Plow Under, another card that does very well in there. Now, Aether Bindings of the Third Age, the legendary wizard arm piece from Rosetta, I'm sure the only reason it's going up and it's best selling is because it's $8 for a legendary arm piece. Like, you pick those up. You only need to get one. And so if there's 90 listings of this Aether Bindings of the Third Age, you just pick one up because it's $8. Like, you might as well just go ahead and do it. Shoot, you could probably buy the cold foil for like $45, and that's still a huge steal for a cold foil legendary out of a new set. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind, right? A lot of these new cards, they generate hype. A lot of the new heroes generate hype. A new meta generates hype. And it's around what cards are going to win. Because again, the competitive meta, the competitive side of Flesh and Blood, the part that LSS is putting a big focus on, is why all those stats exist. It's why all those stats exist on February. It's why all of these cards only go up in price when a new hero hits the top 8 of a calling, or of a battle hardened, or of, you know, the Pro Tour. There, you know, if Dorinthia goes in, if somebody brings Dorinthia into the World Championships and then Dorinthia wins, I promise you every single Dorinthia specialization and card is is going to go through the roof, because people who don't know that all they need to do is put in reps on a hero in order to do well with that hero, they're going to go, I need the best deck in the format. And this deck just won Worlds. So I need to sell everything I have, make no money back, and then use whatever I have from those sales to buy into this deck because it's more hype. There are casual players and there are casual competitive players. The casual competitive players, those are the players who will net deck. They'll go online, they'll play a few rounds on Talishar, they'll win like 2 games, and they'll go, yep, this is my deck. I'll just go ahead and I'll make sure to go buy every card. And that is not effective in the long term of the game. But it is exactly what happens. You have a lot of people who are coming in from other TCGs, people who are just learning this TCG for the first time. They're coming in and they're going, how do I play in these top tables like I was in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic or Digimon or One Piece or whatever game they're playing? They want to come into Flesh and Blood, and the first thing they do is go, how the hell do I get to even top 8 of anything? And it's all about putting in reps, right? Like you can transfer your knowledge from other TCGs and utilize it, but it's all about putting in the reps and putting in the work to determine what cards in your deck are efficient, what cards are not. Play into like the top 5 decks of the meta, and then also play into the bottom 5 decks of the meta. Because if you run into any of the decks that are outside of the top 5 that you played against because you only want to tech your deck for the meta, and you go against a hero that you didn't expect to go against and you lose, like that's on you, right? You need to tech into everything, which is why this is being a professional player in Flesh and Blood is like a secondary job. Like you need to be putting in at least, I would even say 10 games a day is probably like consistently pretty okay. As long as those games aren't like an hour long, right? You're probably hoping for like 30-minute, 45-minute games, but even still 45-minute games, 10 games a day, that's a lot of time. Most people don't have that time. But if you are a professional player on a professional team that has a team that's willing to take a day just to like sit there and brew with everybody, you have that freedom. You can go online, you can talk with a whole bunch of people in a community and make those choices there too. So there's a lot that goes into it. Right, like
what are you trying to do with this Nitro Mechanoid shit? Get the fuck out of here.
It's really like, that's the thing, is that most players, they're willing to try jank stuff in order to win. Like Vincent won like a pro quest, but I'm still playing Vincent, and I'm going to be playing her at my locals because, again, I'm not trying to win a pro quest. If I have the opportunity to go to a pro quest with the deck and I do very well, that's because I put in the reps every weekend when I go to my locals to play Classic Constructed. So I know how to play the deck in person consistently. That is my reps. But I'm not coming home from work every single day, slapping 4 to 5 games into Talishar, and then going to bed. I have better things to do with my life, especially if it comes to like creating content, right? If my content becomes me playing games of Vincent on Talishar, then it's different, right? I can record those games, I can just slap them on there, and I can upload them, and I can make it happen, and people will watch it because gameplay videos of Classic Constructed gameplay tend to do very well in the Flesh and Blood space because people are trying to get competitive and learn about the game. But when you take a look at something like, if I'm covering something like Commoner, people will want to watch cool Commoner stuff, but it's really only the Commoner community that cares about those deck techs and people who only have access to Commoner. But it's not the overarching, this is like speaking to the, the tiny, what do they call it? Tiny leaders, the tiny leaders, niche group of Magic the Gathering of a format when you're talking about something like Clash or Commoner or UPF, because that's not the overarching thing. Like, you're trying to get the attention of Commander players in a niche format that you don't have. Like, it's just not going to happen. And if it happens, awesome. But they're not going to like convert, right? They have money to win. They have prizes to win. Like, there's Flesh and Blood makes the game competitive and rewards you well for doing well competitively. So as long as there's that on the market, people are going to be competitive. So that's why these cards are always going to be, it's always going to be based on what's in the top tables, right? It's not going to be about who puts reps into what. At the end of the day, it's going to be thousands of people tuning in to the World Championships in Osaka and then going, what made top 8? Did this deck win? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buy every card for it right now so I can go to my locals and I can play it because I wasn't sure what I wanted to play. And now I know I can drop $700 to $800 on a deck for this specific thing and then win all of my locals. And then when they don't win because they don't know how to play the game well enough, they sell all their cards and they cry about it. So that's my rant. That's my TED Talk. Sorry for just like going off like that. I just wanted people to be aware that this is the world that we live in for Flesh and Blood. It is not about just like, oh yeah, this card is just like super rare to find. Like as a collector, there are collector cards that are rare to find and do really well on the secondary market. But most of the cards are the non-foil versions of like, I mean, God, Channel Lightning Valley, non-foil, almost $20. The card just came out. You need 3 of them for your deck if you're going to play Acilio or you're going to play Aurora. It's
really?
a necessary card for you to play. Yeah. It's because Aurora's killing it out there. She's absolutely killing. That's why Gone in the Flash is $20. The extended art, you know how much the extended art Gone in the Flash is? I pulled this card during our live stream when I was
$115, it looks like.
$115 for an extended art Gone in the Flash. You've got a lot of these cards. Current Funnel is going for freaking $17.
So I should feel even worse about the box that I opened that had basically like absolutely no legendaries, no marbles, just junk.
Well, what Majestics did you get?
Let's see here. Let's go to my Majestic.
Because if you got any of the freaking like really cool Runeblade or Lightning or Earth Majestics, you will have paid for your box. Like
here's my stack. We're gonna read these out loud. Ready? All right. We got Florian, the Rotwood Harbinger.
Yep.
We got Florian, the Rotwood Harbinger.
You got 2.
We got Aurora, the Shooting Star. This also includes my pre-release that I went to. Stuff.
This is out of a box. This is out of one box, though.
I don't remember if all. I know at least one of. I didn't get both Florians, but I got all 3 Adult Heroes in one box. I know that.
Oh my God.
I have Vaporize and Shock, Rampant and Growth. Nolan Shock. Plow Under.
That's good. Plow Under's like a $20 card.
Plow Under's 20. Oh, it's not $20.
Yeah, it is.
Let me look. Plow Under. Oh, apparently it is $20. It was not $20.
It is. It is. It wasn't $20 when you pulled it, but that's how effective.
Succumb to Temptations. Where's that one land?
That's a $12 card.
Okay, that's good. I got Acilio. 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Volzar.
Cold foil?
Yeah, it was a cold foil.
That's pretty good. Hold on, let me just double check that because the cold foil weapons are going for a lot.
I thought it was $5 last I looked.
$10 for a cold foil. Volzar.
The remainder of everything I got is Drink 'em Under the Table.
Okay, that's specialization.
Adaptive Dissolver, $2. And my foil was a Splatter Skull.
Okay. Yeah, I think if anything, that is the ruinator of your pulls is the fact that you got so many adult heroes, because like that's hard to do in some cases.
But again, this includes my pre-release kit, which had, I went to one of those. There was no prize supports off of that. I bought an additional, I think it was like 3 or 4 packs worth of stuff. Then I had an entire box that came from Team Covenant. I opened that. Again, I was going to open multiple cases worth of stuff, but I just, after some thought, I kind of paused on popping any of the case stuff at the moment, just because my luck has not been that great as of recently. So I'm just.
And at the end of the day, if you don't feel like your luck is good, even if you feel like your luck is good, just buy singles because it's gonna be cheaper on you anyway.
Well, and I was, looking for the singles to do the stuff that I'm stocking to resell some items as well. However, I'm looking at, in this case, if I can spend $100 and get, for lack of a better word, 30,000 cards, and then I'm gonna sort those, collate, and get it. It's just the commons and rares, but people will, they're the sets and some of those are useful. So I went a different route with it for the moment to see what I can pull off, because I was just not finding luck in the other stuff. But yeah, so I guess the most expensive card I got right now is Plow Under.
Yeah,
Cool.
Plow Under. I mean, that's still, like I said, man, that's still pretty good. And a lot of the things, like, even further showing that, like, a lot of this is just a player's market is if you take a look at any of the Marvel sigils, there's only like a couple that are worth any money. I shouldn't say any money, because like $20 is still money.
Sigil
but
of Brilliance is $100. I mean, the Marvel Heroes people, those look good. There's definitely some cards in this set that look great. I mean, honestly, seeing that Arcanite Fortress is only a $50 card for the extended art, I feel like I need to pick that up before somebody announces another Arcanite something, because that's just ridiculously stupid priced for.
It's cheap, especially for an extended art version of it. Like any of these extended arts that are inexpensive. Like, I think 10 foot tall extended art is like $35.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And like, granted, like, in most cases you're going to need 3 of them if that's like the tech in the future. But that's, a card like this that's really hard to get. If you spend $110 on 3 copies of extended art 10 foot tall and bulletproof, you never end up playing them. And then somebody goes, hey, this is a deck that won with 3 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and they won the world championship.
I really want to
it.
be that person.
Like, then, you gotta go ahead and do it. Go play freaking Bravo and make that happen or something. Like, there's
Nitro Mechanologist.
so many things. There's so many cool things. Like, I think it's really about just what you can get. Even just the fact that Arcanite Fortress itself is only $20, right? Mm-hmm. Lightning Greaves from the set is like $35. Base Purgatory is like $40. Legendaries were never this price in
1.0.
Arcane Rising.
Yeah.
Or Crucible of War. They were never, ever this price. Ever.
I bet you that's worth something.
Damn right.
And then,
the rumor is that they're the Verdant's Feet is the only token card there that sells for any actual money. It sells for like $5.
Yeah, I was told specifically in my bulk I'm not getting any of those. So I'm kind of sad, because now I have to go find one to be able to complete my my.
That's wild. They wouldn't give that to you.
Yeah, I was explicitly told I will not be seeing any of those in any of my multi-thousand boxes of bulk.
Somebody knows something we don't.
People are crazy. So. Well, I think we've chatted for a pretty long time. I think I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. So I appreciate you hanging out, and I all over the place today. But that's good. That's the joy of talking about stuff.
Right. That's the nice thing about podcasts, is that, we kind of just get to shoot the shit, hang out, talk about Flesh and Blood, talk about our love for the game, and just, make it our own. But like, at the end of the day, anybody who's listening, if you're enjoying the podcast, and it's really just about what you want to do. If you're a casual player just looking to get into the game, play casually. You don't have to play competitively. But if you're a competitive player and you want to get into the game, you gotta put in the reps. If you want to be like, find the hero that resonates with you, find the class that resonates with you, and stick to it, because that's how you get better in Flesh and Blood. It's not about the cards in your deck. It's about the amount of time and effort you've put into that hero.
Well, and that's that's why I stuck with in my eyes at least. I stuck with Mechanologist because I really like Mech, and I think that long term, if I keep sticking with it, I'm decent at Dash. Dash, even though she'll retire soon, all the other mechs, they're still mech. I mean, it's the core is still the same, I think. So.
Yep, and you'll have all the stuff for the freaking crazy day that they actually come out with, like, Draconic Mechanologist or something like that. Like,
I hope. Modal,
it's gonna be wild.
I still swear there needs to be a generic piece of equipment that's like roll a d6 and then like this, adds that talent to your hero. But I know the problem is you have to build your deck beforehand, so you can't like. There's got to be like.
Yeah, that's a little hard to do. I would say you see like and those are fun things that you can do even for like a PVE concept, right? Where you can get like a deck of cards of like a bunch of different classes and talents, and you could be like, okay, cool. Like before you enter into this battle or whatever, you can roll 3d6, and then you can. Or you can roll a d6 and then take that many cards from the top of this deck, and it doesn't matter what their talent or class is. You can just slap them into your deck, and you'll be able to play them. So,
one of the concepts that I'll let you noodle on is I ended with we'll win with this was you have you're playing your deck, but then as you defeat the thing, you basically would get like a reward off of another deck. That is like you add that to your deck to be able to play. So you start with a really concise deck, similar to like Dominion, if you've ever played that board game, where like it's a deck building. So you have to purchase the cards, but you have this core 10, and then it builds from there. But one of the concepts you could do with that is you have class specific piles. Like here's a mech pile, here's a shadow pile, here's a warrior pile, and then you could like. If you're a mech class, you can get 2 mech cards, but maybe if you're not a shadow class, you can get 1 shadow card or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of fun, like, but it's random still. You don't know really what's in there. So I don't, I've been spending way too much time trying to think of crazy fun ways to go for boss battle type stuff ever since the Lorcana PvE thing came out, and my brain has been going down that. So all right, anyways, we're all yawning. I'm yawning. My cat is yawning because my cat has come up and said hi. So, pleasure. So until next time, cheers. I'll catch you all later. So,
bye, everybody.
Bye.